Revolvers. To me, they're kind of like the manual cars of the gun world. Fewer people know how to run one, but those who do will often tell you that it's the best way to enjoy the ride. Now you might be thinking to yourself, in the days of modern high-capacity pistols, who in their right mind would still choose a wheel gun? Well, the answer is very simple. Just like the denim that you wear, some things just never go out of style. The undeniable cool and simplicity of a revolver is something that many of us have all fantasized about at some point. And today, you get to live that fantasy with the Ares APR revolvers. Before we get started on these bad boys, we need to also talk about the real gun they're modeled after. The iconic Smith & Wesson 686, chambered for the powerful 357. It's a robust L-frame revolver which began production in 1980 and is still being made to this very day as the new 686 Plus with a 7-shot cylinder. Personally, I've always enjoyed revolvers, whether real or airsoft, but airsoft revolvers have always been sort of a niche novelty in the market due to their low capacity and finicky reload. That makes them kind of impractical for airsoft skirmishes. Now, there's been designs in the past that use internal magazines to increase the capacity, but that came at the cost of unrealistic handling, which pretty much takes away all the fun in a revolver. But the increasing popularity of action air competitions have created a greater demand for quality, realistic airsoft revolvers. And the ones we'll be looking at today are probably the best airsoft revolvers your money can buy. And we've got two different flavors on the menu today. We have a sleek classic model if old school is more your vibe, and we have a fully decked out combat model by CL Project Design if you're looking for that peak competitive performance. Now, starting with the classic model, the one we have here comes with a 3.5-inch barrel. A shorter version with a 2-inch barrel is also available. The entire gun is finished in a beautiful polished silver finish, and as soon as you pick up the gun, you can immediately feel the immense weight of the revolver. Definitely very different from a polymer frame pistol that we're used to. In a very nice way, it feels like a solid chunk of metal in my hand. Since there are already fewer moving parts in a revolver, and this gun seems to be really nicely tolerant. You don't have a lot of weird movements or wobble in your parts, and as far as I can tell, everything other than the grips and the sights are made out of metal. Now, along the top strap, you'll find your hop-up adjustment, which can be adjusted with a small Allen key. That's right, this airsoft revolver comes with a adjustable hop-up. And as for your sight setup, your front sight is a highlighted fixed blade, and your rear sight is a windage and elevation adjustable notch. While shooting a revolver in double action definitely takes practice, but you can also shoot them in single action if you need to take a very accurate shot. In this condition, your trigger has zero take-up and immediate break. Overall, this revolver feels very well built. The tight tolerance has created an incredibly smooth action. The cylinder is evenly spaced between the frame, and the hammer engagement feels both precise and positive. Look at that glassy action of the cylinder. While there's definitely some weight behind the trigger on double action, the resistance feels very consistent throughout the entire travel. And since the real 686 was designed to be a police revolver, a heavy trigger typical of a duty pistol is a realistic design. And what surprised me the most about this revolver is the use of real wood grips. Since airsoft revolvers typically need space in the grip for either a CO2 canister or a gas reservoir, most manufacturers will usually offer imitation wood grips made by injection molding, since that's a lot easier to make. But Ares actually went through the trouble of machining these grips from real pieces of wood just to have that extra level of authenticity, which I really appreciate. So what would happen if this gun took steroids? Well, you would end up with the CL Project Design Combat Custom, which features a matte black frame with a burnt bronze cylinder, stainless screws, and polished internals. This version receives a complete makeover with a range of modern upgrades to get the most out of this platform. Now, from the top down, we have front and rear fiber optic sights, with the rear sight also being windage and elevation adjustable. We also have top and bottom Picatinny rail, because without rails it wouldn't be very tactical. But the front rail and the counterweight can be removed and configured to your preference. As much as I love the look of wood grips on revolvers, I have to admit these rubber grips are a lot more comfortable. And in this case, it's definitely a better match for the overall styling of this pistol. It's also fitted with an extended cylinder release to help facilitate your lightning fast reload. I think this particular modification makes a huge difference for me, because the original release sort of requires you to exert some inward pressure as you push forward. But this design brings it a lot closer to your hand, so you don't need to adjust your grip when you manipulate it. And it also turns it into a linear motion, requiring less effort. The internals on this version has been specifically tuned by CO Project Design for competition. So your hammer sear and your trigger has been polished for optimal engagement. And as for the rest of your internals, including the hammer spring, it's all been adjusted accordingly. In combination with the lightweight cylinder, this version delivers an incredibly quick double action trigger. Honestly, I'm usually not a fan of modernized revolvers, but I think this is an example of a tactical revolver well done. There are no unnecessary flashy features. Every design has a purpose behind it. And I always thought that close red dot scopes looked pretty cool on revolvers. And Novus actually hooked us up with this sweet MBS red dot. So I'm gonna go ahead and install this onto the gun. And I'm thinking I'll probably remove the bottom rail to clean up the silhouette a bit, but I will keep the counterweight so that it balances out the added mass from the scope. And just like that, we have our red dot installed on the revolver. What do you think? I really like the way it looks right now, and I'm really excited to try it out at the range. But before we do that, I also want to take a moment to appreciate the design of these bullets, because I think these are some of the most convincing airsoft shells that I've seen. I think the use of the gray rubber tip is a very clever idea, because not only does it hold the BB, but when you look at it, it sort of imitates the look of a jacketed soft point. And the silver shell reminds me of the nickel-plated casings that you find on premium ammo. So your gun is gonna come with a box of shells like this, these cartridges. There's gonna be 6 of them. And in the back of the box, you'll find a single moon clip. And let me go ahead and show you how to put that together. When you open your box of cartridges, you're gonna get 6 shells inside. And behind the foam, you will find a single moon clip. Now the moon clip holds your shells together, making them a lot easier to manage during reload. So one way to do it is to prop it up against a table or something rigid, and line up the groove towards the rim of the cartridge to the moon clip and just press straight down. I also highly recommend investing in this little tool, which CO Project Design sells. This will make your life a lot easier if you're gonna be messing with your moon clips a lot, especially when it comes to removing the shells from the moon clip. Now this is very inexpensive. It's just a simple little tool, a piece of tubing with a cutout. When you use it, you put the casing into the tube and just have it expose it just enough to have that groove outside. And then you can use that entire tube as a handle, giving you a lot better leverage when you put your shells into the moon clip. And this is especially useful when it comes to removing your shells from the moon clip. So to remove it, you want to put your tube over the casing, all the way down past the moon clip, and just give it a twist. Just like that. This would be an otherwise tedious task without this tool. The ability to utilize moon clips greatly increases the usability of your revolvers, because you can now pretty much manage your ammo as you would with magazines. Now, Ares also makes a very nice aluminum speed loader that allows you to load all 6 rounds simultaneously. So there are essentially 3 different ways you can load your Ares Revolver. You can load them with the moon clip, or you can use your speed loader, or if you're trying to create dramatic tension for the camera, you can load them individually by hand. Now we're going to do a quick chrono test with these 2 revolvers, and before we do that, we need to load the CO2 canisters. Ares has made it very easy because it actually has this little hex tool stored right here in the back of the grip compartment, in the back strap. But I do find it to work a little bit better with the silver APR 02 because the Combat Custom 05 has a thicker grip at the bottom, so the tool doesn't quite engage far enough into the slot. So if you're running the APR 05, I really recommend keeping one of these full-size Allen keys handy. So let's go ahead and load them up. Just gonna pop one in there. As soon as you start to feel resistance, turn it quite a bit at once, and it will seal up against the nozzle there. So this one's good to go. And the grip panels, they just snap into place via the 2 little metal prongs inside the grips. So line it up, and that's done. Now let's load up the 05. I'm gonna use the Allen key for this one. Okay, starting to feel resistance. Now it's in all the way. Okay, and while I'm doing this, I also want to show you what I think is the quickest way to load your moon clips and your speed loader. So what I like to do is you can really grab any open top containers, but I think this bowl is just the perfect size. And since we're doing a chrono test, I'm going to be using 0.2 grams from Border Defense. So go ahead and pour a good amount in there, and watch this. Just take one of your moon clips, just dunk it in, nose down. There you go. You have a loaded moon clip. So if you're shooting a lot, if you're practicing at home, or if you're doing a competition, this could potentially save you a lot of time. And the same trick also works with your speed loader. So I'm gonna go ahead and load your speed loader with the empty cartridges. And once they're all in there, they're nice and lined up, do the same thing, voila. And you have a fully loaded speed loader. All right, now let's start with the chrono test. Let's start with the APR 002, the classic model. I'm going to shoot 6 moon clips through it, and on the last one, I'm going to shoot it in single action because I did notice that the hammer travel is slightly different on double and single action. That could lead to some velocity difference. So let's go ahead and load up our first clip. The first 2 shots seem to have registered kind of weird, but the rest of them all read about, it's just slightly over 100 meters per second. We're now on our second clip. That didn't read. 121. Okay, that's definitely from picking up the vapor from the muzzle, so we're going to ignore that one. All right, that was just the gas on the last one. On our third clip. Again, that's the vapor. 114, 113, 113. That's it. 118, 110, 112, 110, 112. The velocity is actually surprisingly consistent for a CO2 revolver because CO2 is not a liquid gas like green gas. They're just under really high compression. So I think so far it's actually surprisingly consistent considering that it's a non-blowback CO2. Okay, that last shot was just the gas. We're now on our last moon clip, and we're going to shoot this in single action only and see how that affects the output velocity. Make sure that cylinder is indexed. 1010, 102, 104. Keep in mind the velocity will decrease over time. That's definitely a dud, since you're depleting your canister as you shoot. All right, that's it for the APR 02. Let's move on to the Combat Custom. And now for the APR 002 Combat Custom. Let's see if those lighter springs do anything to the output velocity at all. Starting with our first clip. Oh, don't forget to turn on the chrono. All right, we're game. I think those are accurate readings since they are pretty consistent. We're hovering around 50 meters per second. Okay, that's definitely a dud. 63, 59, 54. That's quite a bit weaker than the classic APR 02. The velocity is actually picking back up. I suspect the weaker springs might have a hard time opening the valve in this weather, since it's actually pretty hot today, and it might be light striking a little bit on double action. We're not really noticing any consistent decrease in output. We're on our 5th moon clip. All right, now for the last moon clip, again on single action only. Whoa, 157. Okay, there's no way that's right. There's also no way that's correct. 154. 150. Okay, that was just a gas. Since it had a lot of misreads, I'm gonna give this gun another go on single action. So let's go ahead and load up our moon clip again. All right, so 6 more shots on single action. 158, 116, 157. Okay, we're not gonna count those, the ones that go over 200, because there's no way this gun's shooting over 200. All right, that's it for the chrono test on these 2 revolvers. Now, as you can see from our chrono test, both revolvers perform relatively consistent for a CO2 revolver. Now, we did notice that on the APR 005 Combat Custom, the output velocity was a lot lower on double action, and that's because it's really hot today, and we're inside a warehouse with a metal roof and no air conditioning. So the lighter hammer spring has a hard time opening the valve all the way, or as you might call it, light striking. Now, your APR 005 will come with 3 different hammer springs: a ultra lightweight competition spring, a regular spring, and a high-strength hammer spring. So I think in Taiwan, the high-strength hammer spring would be more suitable, especially during the summer. But the current spring that's inside this gun would be suitable if you live, say, anywhere in the North American West Coast. Now, because what I have is a very early production model, it only comes with the 1 spring inside. But it does, having a lighter action does come at the cost of the strength of the hammer spring. So it's kind of a balance. So depending on your region and your application, you want to use the appropriate hammer spring for your revolver. Now, we also notice with these revolvers, your hammer travel is slightly different on single and double action. On double action, your hammer only travels about 80% the stroke of a single action travel. So in single action, you do get a bit more power, sort of a bump in your velocity. And of course, pre-cocking your hammer gives you that nice single action trigger pull, which gives you almost an instant break. Another really nice thing about these revolvers is that they actually come with a functional hop-up. On top of your top strap, just right in front of the cylinder gap, there's a small hole on the top. That's your hop-up adjustment, which can be made with a Allen key. Now, this being a revolver, the amount of space for a hop-up mechanism is very limited. So this is A very basic hop-up feature. You have a grub screw that moves up and down, and that's what adjusts your hop-up pressure knob. Now, the effect of this hop-up is limited, but for a Revolver, honestly, it's better, so much better than having no hop-up at all. And you can actually get a decent usable accuracy out of these Revolvers. Now, but just do keep in mind that when you adjust these hop-ups, it's a good idea to remove the grub screw entirely, use a little bit of thread locker, and let it cure about halfway, and then adjust it to your desired setting so that it will actually hold its setting and not just drift around when you start shooting it. In other words, this is not a hop-up you want to be messing with all the time. It's sort of a set and forget kind of deal. So starting with the classic model with the 3.5-inch barrel, I think it's pretty much what I expected from a double-action revolver, except every aspect of it is very nice. This being a double-action revolver, of course, the trigger pull is going to be long and it's going to be heavy. But it's a heavy but nice trigger. Like I said, despite the weight of the trigger, the resistance feels consistent throughout the entirety of this travel. And on single action, it's very easy to shoot accurately. Now, when it comes to the APR 005, the combat custom model, despite the two revolvers essentially being the same model, I can tell you this feels like a completely different beast. So think of it like a sports bike. When you're in a sports car or a sports bike, this gun just makes you want to shoot faster. Well, actually, in my case, I probably try to shoot faster than I should have because first of all, I'm actually not that used to pistol red dots, but the trigger on this version is just crazy light. It's incredibly effortless to break the shot on double action. And on single action, this is the textbook definition of a hair trigger. Nothing. Like, the slightest input before you even have a chance to twitch, it's already gone off. It's definitely very nice trigger work on this gun. Another thing to be noted here is the cylinder timing. Now, the original model cylinder is a lot heavier. That's why when I spin the cylinder, it seems like it's smoother because it's heavier and it has more momentum to keep it spinning. But actually, the weight of the cylinder contributes to part of the double action cycle's resistance. Now, on the single action, on the 005, the cylinder has a lot of material removed from it, making it much lighter and also reducing a lot of that resistance in a double action trigger pull. And notice when it comes to the cylinder timing on the 005, the next shot indexes the barrel when I pull the trigger only about halfway through its travel. And that's conducive to shooting fast because then you have a much smaller chance of seizing up the trigger if you don't reset the trigger all the way. Now, a couple of things to keep in mind when you're shooting a revolver, whether it's airsoft or a real one. First of all, when you open your cylinder to perform your reloads, make sure you actually engage your cylinder lock all the way before you start to exert any force on the cylinder. Otherwise, you can risk wearing out your cylinder lock and your cylinder pin, especially on an airsoft cylinder, because oftentimes these components are not made of steel. They're also not steel on these Aries revolvers, but so far they seem to hold up fine after a lot of normal use. So just make sure the cylinder lock is engaged all the way before you go ahead and pop out that cylinder. Now, when it comes to loading your moon clips, it really helps to keep your gun as vertical as possible so that when you load your moon clip, you can just line up the casings and just have them drop straight into the cylinder, just like this. Because otherwise, if you don't have your gun vertical and you have it sort of sideways like this, you sort of have to support the moon clip on the side. And the moon clip is actually quite thin, so any sort of inward pressure can cause the tips to misalign and will no longer line up with the cylinder. So notice when I grab it sideways like this, the spacing between the casings are not even. So the best way to do it is to hold it just by the edge and just to have it hang down like this so that the spacing is even between each cartridge. Now, if you ever see yourself shooting a real revolver in the near future, another nice habit to get into is using the extractor rod. So during your reload, you can actually use the extractor to push the casings out, even though you don't need to do this with airsoft revolvers because the casing doesn't expand, they don't get stuck, so they normally just fall out from gravity. But with real revolvers, you often will almost always have to use the extractor to get your casings out. And another thing to be mindful of is your grip, because if you're used to a semi-auto pistol like a Glock, a lot of people are used to the thumb extended forward grip. And the problem here is my thumb is actually in front of the cylinder. When real revolvers are fired, a lot of the burning gas will escape from between the cylinder and the forcing cone. And if your thumb is past the cylinder, it's gonna get caught in that blast. And it's gonna be a bad day with some nasty results. So you want to avoid doing that. Instead, some people do this grip where they put their support hand thumb over their firing hand thumb, or I use a very weird grip. Well, according to other people who shoot revolvers, I have the tendency to wrap my thumb over my firing hand, and a lot of people have told me that's really weird, but I've tried to learn the common grip several times, but it just never picked up with me, so that's why I've stuck with this method. But anyways, either method is safe, so just make sure your thumb is not in front of the cylinder. Now, I know a lot of you are gonna be very tempted to do this as soon as you get your revolver, and that is to swing the cylinder shut with a spinning cylinder. And I'm gonna tell you, please don't do that, because this is one of the most damaging things you can do to a revolver. It's fine to spin the cylinder, it's also fine to swing the cylinder shut, but just not both of those. And make sure when you swing it shut, you don't do it too hard. And another thing that people are gonna do is to do the sleeve roll like this. And that can be achieved when you have the hammer on sort of like a half cock that frees up the cylinder to spin counterclockwise. But make sure when you do this, you have good control on the hammer and actually keep it in that half cock position, because this hammer actually only has two positions. So anywhere in between has to be held down with your finger. So make sure you actually have positive control over that. Otherwise, you will be locking up the cylinder by slamming the lock into it. And that's also very bad for the cylinder lock. So besides the handy little moon clip tool I showed you earlier, a lot of the kit that I'm using today are also from CL Project Design, and that includes my holster and my caddy for the moon clips. So the holster is a open cut competition style holster, and needless to say, is a very snug fit because it's made specifically for the revolver, and it uses a tech lock hardware from Blade Tech, which opens up so you don't need to remove your belt to throw it over your kit. And for the caddy, you pretty much need this. This is not really a recommendation, but this is something you pretty much just need if you're going to be competing with a revolver. But this caddy has will hold up to 6 moon clips, and they also have a magnetic insert, so will hold anything made out of steel. So such as this speed loader, which has a steel screw in the middle, that also goes on there very nicely. So in conclusion, I think these are definitely among some of the best factory-made airsoft revolvers that are currently on the market, both externally and internally, especially when it comes down to the look of the revolver. These look a lot more realistic because a lot of other brands will have an outer portion frame, especially here towards the back, will be a lot thicker because they need the room for the gas router. But Ares has managed to design their internals to be a lot more compact so that it's able to maintain this authentic silhouette to the real firearm. So that's it for this episode. If you enjoy this content, please consider dropping a like and subscribing to our channel so you don't miss any of our upcoming contents. This is Louis from Cosmar Airsoft, signing off. Whoa.